car market in Mogadishu.
NATO's military success against
many Western nations.
This is On Assignment.
And we're back with another edition of On Assignment, VOA's Stories Behind the Stories. I'm Alex Villarreal, here with Philip Alexio.
Coming up on the program, VOA goes back to Boston a year after the marathon bombing.
The U.S. National Basketball Association moving on from scandal after a team owner's racially charged comments go public.
Then, how engineering yeast chromosomes could help make medicines and biofuels and more.
And we go inside a fresh, fun, and fast-paced VOA lifestyle show giving Pakistanis a taste of American life.
The red light is up. On Assignment is on the air right now. This year's Boston Marathon in April was bittersweet for many of the 36,000 participants. It was only a year earlier that the race was interrupted by a double bombing. People gathered along the route to pay respect to the 3 people killed by the explosions and the police officer who was killed during the manhunt for the suspects a few days later.
VOA's Carolyn Persutti went to Boston last year to cover the bombings, and she was there again for the 1-year anniversary. We talked about what she saw and how the city is still affected.
At first glance, it looks like a typical marathon. But the Boston Marathon is forever changed because of what happened last year near the finish line. At Monday's start, a moment of silence for the victims of the double bombings. Later, the national anthem and a flyover of Army ambulance helicopters that provided medical support after the bombings.
Carolyn, you were in Boston this year for the first marathon since the attacks last year. What was the mood like?
Well, it was definitely different than last year. I mean, the first thing that hit us was that we had never seen Boylston Street as a marathon, set up for a marathon, because when we went there last year, it was littered with what everyone had left behind. And of course, Boylston Street is that last stretch before the finish line. You know, we saw all kinds of debris there. This year, there were runners. Even the day before, people were taking pictures with the finish line. They were just excited to be there in the spirit of sports.
What would you say is something that impacted you from that experience of being able to compare those 2 visits?
Well, Boston as a city has changed. Their marathon will never be the same, although they would love for it to be just a normal marathon with the emphasis on who wins the marathon. But there will always be this memory of this past year, of what happened during the 2013 marathon.
Throughout the year, Bostonians healed and vowed to come back stronger in 2014. They did, and celebrated an historic race.
There's the line. He's across.
Meb Keflezighi became the first American in 31 years to win the Boston Marathon.
And a lot of these people were people who had been there last year when the bombings struck. So why was it, you talked to many of them, why was it that they wanted to return?
It wasn't that they wanted to return. Somebody said to me, I had to return. She said, it wouldn't have been right for me not to return because it was something that I didn't finish. She got stopped, this one person that I talked to got stopped just a few miles before the finish line. And she said, it's unfinished business. She said, I had to be here and I'm not going to let a crime get in the way of what I need to finish. And I think Boston as a whole felt that they needed to take back this race from the negativity that surrounded it last year. And they wanted to reclaim it, reclaim the race, reclaim the finish line, and certainly to reclaim their tradition of more than 100 years of holding this marathon.
What kinds of steps were taken for this year's race to ensure people were safe?
Extreme security. Yeah, you're right about that. 3,500 police officers were on hand, and you could not bring anything into the area of the finish line. Even the media, you know, we're used to huge bags carrying batteries and cables and whatever. Nobody could carry anything.
You couldn't carry bags.
Only clear bags. A clear bag to show exactly what was in it, or a fanny pack, something you wear around your waist. Very small bags, but even that, you had to go through a special checkpoint. So there were bagless check lines, and then there were bagged lines. You could get through so much quicker if you didn't have anything that you were carrying.
There was an image you said when you were there that will stick with you from this marathon experience. What is that?
Last year, Celeste Corcoran and her daughter Sydney were standing on the sidelines, and they were waiting for Celeste's friend to come along when the bombs went off. Celeste lost both of her legs, and Sydney had a serious injury to her thigh. So this is mother and daughter, both had hospital beds together. And this year, that friend finished the race, and she finished the race with both of them joining her during the last block on Boylston Street.
Wow.
So it's that picture of Celeste going through with her prosthetic legs, and her daughter and Celeste's friend all holding hands and crossing that finish line.
Thanks again to VOA reporter Carolyn Persutti. Now, the surviving Tsarnaev brothers suspected in the Boston Marathon bombings remains in a U.S. federal prison awaiting trial later this year.
Time for a short break, but when we come back, a U.S. pro basketball team owner sparking controversy. You're watching On Assignment. Don't publicize your associations with black people, and don't bring them to my games. That's what married Los Angeles Clippers owner Donald Sterling was recorded telling his girlfriend in audio released to the media in April. The recording set off a firestorm of events, leading the NBA to ban Sterling from all league activities and fine him $2.5 million. Joining me now is VOA's Sonny Young. And Sonny, let's go back to the beginning of this, because Donald Sterling is not exactly really a stranger to controversy. So tell us a little bit more about Donald Sterling.
Well, he's 80 years old. Up until now, he had been the longest tenured owner in the NBA. He bought the Clippers back in 1981 for $13 million. And that's big, Phil, because they're saying if he sells the team, maybe as much as 100 times that amount, over $1 billion for the Clippers. He has been involved in racial controversy in the past. He made a lot of his money through real estate, and some of his tenants filed some legal actions against him for racial discrimination.
Okay, so he has some history with regard to that. And so, but can NBA owners actually make him sell the team?
Good question, Phil. This is an unprecedented action. I think they need to be unanimous to force him out as owner. But that said, he can still file a lawsuit to block their action. Still a lot of question marks whether he's going to fight this in court or not. I'm talking about Sterling.
So there's going to be a lot of legal wrangling going on, I presume.
I'm guessing this will not play out quickly, right. That we could see a lot of legal wrangling involved.
Okay. So, but now that the Clippers are now one of the best teams in the league, they have been cellar dwellers for a long, long time, and this comes at a time when they actually do have a legitimate chance to win the NBA championship.
Very exciting team, Phil, and I think the players on the Clippers were caught off guard by this controversy. They went the full 7 games in the first round against the Golden State Warriors. They have 2 of the most exciting players in the NBA, Chris Paul at point guard and Blake Griffin, their power forward. Very exciting team to watch.
Yeah, they are a lot of fun. I've been watching some of those games myself. But now, getting back to ownership, if the team is sold, there have been some names bantered about, one of them, I guess, being Magic Johnson, and another one, I guess, media mogul Oprah Winfrey, right?
Yeah, I don't know in terms of what it would cost for this team. They're saying the estimates range from $500 million to over $1 billion.
Wow.
So if Magic and Oprah were to say, yeah, we want to buy the Clippers, I see some sort of block or consortium very wealthy individuals. Another name being mentioned is David Geffen. He's a Hollywood music mogul, billionaire. So yeah, I think there's going to be more than a few people interested in the Clippers.
Well, it's a huge story, so it's going to be very interesting to follow, to say the least. All right, VOA's Sonny Young from the sunny side of sports. Thanks for coming on. And
thank you, Phil.
Bringing us up to date, my friend. All right, time for a short break, but when we come back, making better yeast cells. How and why would you do that? You're watching On Assignment.
Some exciting developments in the world of science. Scientists have built a custom chromosome, a package of genetic material assembled entirely from synthetic DNA. Now, this engineered chromosome we're talking about belongs to yeast, but experts are saying that it can help them understand how genes work in us, humans, as well.
Well, and it could help make these tiny living factories better at producing everything from medicines to biofuels. VOA's Steve Baragona brought us this story, and he talks with me about the science behind it. We begin with the start of his report.
In a lab at Johns Hopkins University, students are stitching together machine-made strands of DNA, the chemical that carries the genetic blueprints of life. Their goal is to assemble all 6,000 genes in the genome of yeast.
Steve Baragona, what is yeast?
All right, yeast is a tiny little creature that it turns barley into beer, it turns grapes into wine, it makes your bread rise, and it's also used as kind of a living factory. Like for the biotech industry, they use it to produce chemicals, they use it to produce things like the active ingredient in anti-malarial drugs and to produce proteins in hepatitis vaccines and things like that. So it does a lot of different things.
And with genetic engineering, scientists could help yeast do those jobs better. Plus, these one-celled creatures share about 1/3 of their genes with us. Studying their genes can teach us a lot about ourselves.
All right, so yeast genes have a similarity to human genes. How so?
Yeah, I mean, basically genes are very similar across all living things, really. I mean, genetically, we are about 98% chimpanzee. And as it turns out, about 1/3 of yeast genes are similar to genes that we have. So they're doing jobs in the cells that need to be done in all cells. They're the same in whether you're a microscopic organism or a person.
So the students at Johns Hopkins are trying to duplicate this yeast chromosome. How are they doing this, and why are they doing it?
It's like it's a stitching operation, basically.
Okay.
You take a little chunk of DNA. DNA is what all our genes are made of. You lay another little piece on top of it, and you'll lay another piece on top of that, and you'll lay another piece on top of that, and eventually, and these things are big. I mean, a chromosome is like the one chromosome that they've done contains about 100 genes. And it's big. I mean, this is a lot of DNA, so it takes a lot of time. It's not difficult from a molecular biological perspective, but it's labor intensive. So it took a long time.
And so they've got 15 more, if you will, books to put together here.
Exactly.
And then what?
What they're doing in this case is they're designing it in such a way that they can take these chromosomes apart and put them back together and see how they work. And they're thinking that if they, once you can engineer these things however you want them, then you can design them to do those jobs that we talked about before, making bread or beer or fuel or chemicals, pharmaceuticals, drugs, vaccines. You can design them to do those things better. It's just all a matter of how you put those genes together.
Okay, and so something like this has been done before, as you just mentioned in your report. Mm-hmm. So what's different between what happened in 2008 and what the students are doing now?
The previous job was done in bacteria, and what's different is it's just a much simpler organism. These yeast are much more like us than bacteria are. So it's more relevant that they've done it in yeast than doing it in bacteria.
And in this lab, these are students. They're pretty young kids, if you will. And so what do they say to you about doing this kind of research?
It's pretty cool. I mean, I used to work in research labs, and this was not something that we could do when I was a student. I mean, this is all things that have happened in the last 5-10 years or so, that you're able to do this at the level of undergraduate students.
Macintosh Cornwell says it's helped him prepare for a career in science.
The range of skills you learn and the amount of experience you get in such a small time frame it's invaluable, really.
But it's exciting for them. You know, it's one of the things that kind of struck me from talking to these kids in the lab was not so much, wow, how cool is it that I'm putting together a yeast chromosome? For them, it's almost like, well, you know, of course we can do this. It's biotechnology has progressed to the point where these are not difficult techniques. What's interesting to them is that these are the techniques that are going to prepare them for jobs, working in labs or doing, you know, any kind of basic research. These are like the fundamental skills that anybody going into this field has to know. It's almost like trade school for them.
So looking down the road 10 years from now, what is their vision? Where do they see this going?
What they're doing is they're engineering the instruction book for living things.
Okay.
If you can engineer the instruction book for a living thing, you can do almost anything. You know, yeah, you can make better fuels, you can make better medicines, you can make better, you know, plants that'll help feed
better
the world.
People.
You know, better people. Could be, yes, yeah. That would be nice.
All right. Better people indeed, and we need better people like Steve Baragona. Maybe we could rearrange our chromosomes and we could be better.
We could turn into a Steve Baragona.
Yeah, as good as he is anyway.
All right, well, moving on, a new VOA Urdu language TV show went on the air last year. It is called Kahani Pakistani and has Aisha Galani as its host.
The show looks at the life stories of Pakistanis and other South Asians living here in the U.S. and also gives a glimpse of standard American life.
Well, I sat down with Aisha to talk about the program, so check it out.
Assalamu alaikum viewers and welcome to Kahani Pakistani ka brand new episode. मैं हूँ आपकी host Aisha Gilani. I like to show a slice of Americana to Pakistanis and what Pakistani Americans are doing here, and then to Americans I like to show them what Pakistanis are up to and that, you know, we are responsible citizens in this country as well.
Right, and you see that with a lot of the topics you cover. You have a mixed martial arts,
yes.
One episode that focused on that, where you actually got in the ring and did a little fighting yourself.
Yes, that was a lot of fun, and actually the person who I had as my, like the anchor of the show, that piece he's called the godfather of MMA in Pakistan. He's born and raised here, he's of Pakistani descent, and he went to Pakistan, and he single-handedly introduced MMA as a professional sport in Pakistan. And I got to try it out too, which was a lot of fun.
What's been your favorite episode, would you say, that you've done?
Gosh. I went to a homeless shelter in DC, N Street Village, and these women, I don't know, maybe I just haven't built up that outer, you know, that shell yet. It really got to me. I had to keep looking away from the camera because my eyes kept filling up with tears. But these women, they had been incarcerated. A lot of them had suffered from abuse, sexual abuse. They suffered from drug addiction, and they were all homeless. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey in life? What sort of brought you here?
Well, in my childhood, I was molested by my stepfather, and my mom didn't believe me, so it kind of led me and left me.
The day that I showed up, I got a lot more than I bargained for. I didn't know that day they were having a group therapy session, and they were asked to list their 3 demons and angels in their life, and their 3 biggest regrets and their 3 biggest accomplishments. That was really deep and really heavy, and when I left there, I couldn't sleep for 3 days. Because I kept thinking, wow, when you see a person crossing you on the street, you have no idea what their story is. A lot of us turn away when somebody comes up to us and asks us for money, or you're scared and you think, oh, I feel unsafe around this person. But these were the kindest, gentlest people. And I saw, you know, they were bearing their soul. It was really deep.
Our baby daddies have to honor our baby mamas.
The issue of women, that's something that is very close to your heart,
yes.
Right? You have a strong passion for women's issues. Tell us about what that's been like, having this platform to be able to communicate about those issues, especially to women in Pakistan who many times face a whole host of challenges.
It's been an unbelievable experience. I'm so blessed that I have this platform to talk about this. Mistreatment of women and abuse of women is an issue that's a global issue. It happens everywhere. And I have the ability to cover stories in Pakistan and in America. So I cover both stories. Like I said, when I went to that homeless village. And then there are stories such as I interviewed a clinical psychologist who was there after the earthquake in 2006, I believe, happened in Pakistan. And there were a lot of people in rural areas who weren't receiving a lot of aid from the government and whatnot. She went there along with a group of people who provide help for disaster relief services. She worked with these girls who were in these remote rural areas in Pakistan, no connection to the outside world, and a lot of these young girls were molested, they were sexually abused, and they all had these body image and self-confidence issues.
We had these kind of like support groups where they talked about their past, the past trauma, and they talked about what they're currently going through and how they want to change their life.
A lot of this is geared toward viewers in Pakistan. Your show airs in Pakistan. You do sort of an Urdu English mix with your hosting.
English.
Yeah. Oh, really? English? Yeah. I like it. So what is your goal? What do you hope viewers who see this in Pakistan take away from it?
I hope that people who are living in Pakistan see that people in America are a loving people, and Pakistanis living in America haven't forgotten their home country. Yes, we're American, but America stands for opportunity, equality, justice. And that's something that that's the message that I hope to send back home to Pakistan.
All right, thanks again to VOA's Aisha Galani. You can watch Kahani Pakistani on the voanews.com Urdu webpage, as well as Facebook and, of course, YouTube.
Well, staying on the subject of television, Mo Abudu has been called the Oprah of Africa. She runs the only continent-wide TV network and hosts its flagship talk show. Abudu's mission? To shed stereotypes and portray Africa in the same way Hollywood portrays America. Heather Murdoch has the story.
There's no shortage of glamour in Lagos, Nigeria's financial capital, and home to Nollywood, arguably the most prolific film industry in the world. And there might be no one in Lagos more glamorous than Mo Abudu, who heads Ebony Life TV, which calls itself Africa's first global black entertainment and lifestyle network. It beams into nearly every country on the continent. At her office in Lagos, Abudu says that for her, media is not just entertainment.
I think it's critical for Africa to tell its own story. And I think that I felt that media was one of the most powerful tools that I could use to let the world know who we were.
So that gets shot over there, then we have another set of...
These realities include a growing middle class and modern technologies impacting all aspects of life, she says. The network's flagship program, a talk show called Moments with Mo, has led fans to dub Abudu as Africa's Oprah.
People judge you based on what you wear. Definitely. How did that feel?
Never, ever give up. You just keep moving on.
Ebony Life is sponsoring a new home in Lagos that is expected to house 100 girls who would otherwise live on the streets. Abudu says young African women face enormous challenges, but she's living proof that it's possible for them to lead industries on the continent. Abudu doesn't deny that some African stereotypes, like crushing poverty and barren desert lands, are part of life in Nigeria. But Africa is changing fast, she says, and part of her mission is to show that these stereotypes aren't the entire picture. Heather Murdoch, for VOA News, Lagos.
And with that, we close our own TV show as well.
That is correct, but we'll be back again next week with a brand new show, including a segment on students coming from overseas to learn filmmaking in the United States.
You don't want to miss that, but before we go, we want to send a shout out to viewers watching us in Mauritius on Zuku TV.
And you can catch us on assignment anytime at voanews.com, Facebook, and YouTube.
Thanks so much for watching. So long, until next time.